I think for the most part, you're going to see a lot of people have a new worst Indiana Jones movie, and that is Dial of Destiny. I saw it yesterday. You saw it yesterday. We've kind of known at least a core part of the plot for a while because of those Reddit leaks that came out after the Cannes Film Festival. To me, Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character ruins the movie. I really think that that's the case. Just because we've seen sidekicks in Indiana Jones before, and nearly every Indiana Jones movie got some sort of sidekick, and they all might have their skills that are utilized in some way. And at some point in time, they do something that saves Indy, or they have a skill, or they're able to do something that he didn't expect to get them out of a situation. The problem was this sidekick character knew fucking everything. Knew every single thing, was better at Indy at everything, was obviously stronger because she wasn't as old, and she was constantly shitting on Indiana Jones the entire time.
Yeah, like
how did you feel about Phoebe Waller-Bridge?
She just left. Like, once you find out exactly who her character is and what she's trying to do, Indy's trying to help her, and she just leaves him. She like even says in the movie a few times, "I wish you got shot." Like, what the freak?
And then he
she
did.
She also has her own short round, who is actually better at everything too. Her short round can fly planes and do all kinds of stuff as a young lad.
Well, Indy's short round was able to drive really well, even with like wood blocks on his feet. This one's able to fly really well, apparently.
He started an airplane without a key.
Hot-wired it. He was a criminal.
Hot-wired an airplane, and he was able to do all this with. I'm trying not to. He's able to do all this with the real pilot asleep in the back seat.
It was really weird. Let's talk about the beginning. Some non-spoiler stuff. Everybody has seen the trailer where you have de-aged Harrison Ford. Everyone kind of understands that plot. All you got to do is watch the trailer. You can tell, hey, this happened years and years ago, and now this person is back to rectify what happened before years later with Mads Mikkelsen's villain. The de-aged Harrison Ford CGI sequences, to me, felt like a facsimile. Like if you had told an AI to make a 15-minute Indiana Jones movie, like they would do something like that. It didn't quite feel right. It felt a little off. The de-aging looked great when Harrison Ford was just sitting there and not like actively moving around. But as soon as he opened his mouth, you're like, well, this is weird because he sounded old as shit.
Yeah. He didn't sound like a younger Indiana Jones. Right. Just like almost everybody else was saying, for like that first opening sequence, that felt more like an Indiana Jones film than anything else. They were looking for the Spear of Destiny. Oh, sorry, spoiled that. But so like
you are fucking incapable.
I can't
talking about a movie without fucking spoiling.
I'm sorry. Well, it's only in the film for like 5 seconds, but which was sad because there's like a comic book series about Indiana Jones and the Spear of Destiny and whatever you want to call it.
The Lance of Christ.
Yeah,
whatever they were saying.
And
it looked really bad though. The CGI looked horrific in the beginning, and it was also super dark for a reason for all of those sequences. Indiana Jones movies are really like fucking paint by the numbers. They're really simple when you look at all of them, and all of them require some sort of first act where Indiana Jones is after something.
Yeah.
And he finds it, but then something goes wrong in some way, shape, or form, right? All 4 of them have something to do with that. This is the same way. And so it started off fine. It looked weird, but if you had a whole movie of that, I think it would be like strangely tolerable if they had just done the entire movie that way. But that's not what they decided to do.
Yeah, I agree. But that's how it is. It's like they were looking for one item and they stumble across something else. I think with the CGI and the de-aging, it's like they were trying their best to make it look as real as possible. But that's why like a lot of it was very dark. You know, even when they were on top of the train, like the wind was blowing, it was dark. You couldn't really see anything. And so they just tried to figure it out that way. The problem is it's like there was so much stuff that they kind of took from the other films. Let me explain. So when his friend got the Dial of Destiny, he became overly obsessed with it. Very similar to Indiana Jones's dad becoming very obsessed with the Cup of Christ. So like it literally was like almost the same story. And then you have Helena, Phoebe Waller-Bridges' character, who is the daughter of the dad who's obsessed, who is, yeah, maybe I can complete my dad's legacy or whatever. It was like kind of like taking that story and just dumping it in there. She
Yeah,
also has her own form of a short round, which we brought up earlier, her own little sidekick, who's a professional pickpocket thief and can fly a plane and can drive tuk-tuks, whatever they call them, you know, that go 100 miles an hour in India. Apparently, he was able to kill one of the biggest henchmen in the film.
Yeah, so basically the plot of this movie is Mads Mikkelsen's character is like a physicist who works
Yeah.
with the Nazis. He is a Nazi, and he finds this dial of Archimedes, or he's obsessed with this dial of Archimedes. They found half of it, which in theory can like change time, right? Find fractures in time and
At
can
least that's what they
send you
think.
back in
Yeah.
time. And what he is thinking with that is, hey, this, because when you join, the movie starts as Germany's losing the war,
Yeah.
where they're basically in full retreat, Hitler's in hiding, all of this stuff. And he's thinking, hey, we could use this to set things right and to get off on the right foot in the war so we're not losing World War II. Fast forward 25 years later, it's like 1969.
Yeah.
Indiana Jones is a fucking old, tired, bitter man who wakes up hungover with a glass of alcohol in his hand in his underwear. And is yelling at people to stop playing music so loud.
Yeah.
He has divorce papers with Marion sitting on his counter.
But it's weird because in the previous films, he was working at a different university. They never really. And he ends up in a low level, crappy apartment in New York.
It's because he's
And
going through divorce. That's what I
and
think. Yeah.
and he's working at another university. You know, not the ones like in the previous 3 films. So
That to me is the biggest sin of this movie is you want to talk about the Jake Skywalker treatment. They took Indiana Jones and say whatever you fucking want about Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. It's not a great movie, but I do think it's a decent movie. The end of that movie is a very happy ending.
yeah,
It's Marion and Indiana Jones. After all this time apart, they're reunited. He finds out he has a kid that he didn't know about before in Mutt, and they get married, and they're about to start their lives together that have been on pause for a really long time. And it's a really happy way to send it off. They
agreed.
immediately fucking cut all that out. Not
Everything.
only is he getting divorced, they fucking killed off his son.
Yeah. And,
Saying
and
that
blame the son as the reason for all his troubles. Like,
kind
because
of,
his son-
yeah. Because his son went and died in Vietnam, and there was too much grief, and they couldn't deal with it, and it split up their family. They killed off Shia LaBeouf's character of Mutt off screen. To me, I just think that's complete bullshit.
I agree. It's stupid.
And at the end, all just at the end to bring in Marion for nothing at the end to have a reuniting where they already did the reuniting in the last movie.
Yeah.
So they really kind of
And she just comes in with groceries and like everything's fine. And they reenact the scene from Raiders. Where does it hurt? Well, where doesn't it hurt? It doesn't hurt here. And it doesn't hurt here. And you're just like, come on, man.
So that is only part of the problem.
And yeah, I agree with you. Crystal Skull is a much better movie than this. And I can't stand these people that are like saying, well, at least it's better than Crystal Skull.
It's not.
No, it's not.
It's not at all. Crystal Skull definitely has its flaws. The first hour of that movie feels like an Indiana Jones movie, like 1000%. It's not till he finds Ox that it just doesn't feel right because he's a little too goofy and kind of some of the stuff they're doing is a little bit goofy. And obviously the alien shit at the end is stupid. But that movie feels way more like an Indiana Jones movie than this.
When Helena shows up, all of a sudden they're like, oh, I haven't seen you since you were 12. And she goes, hey, you happen to have my dad's dial of destiny? And he's like, okay, let's just go get it. You know, even though you find out later that he promised her dad that he was going to destroy it. And then as soon as she has it in her hand, she's just like, all right, Indy, I hope you die. And you find out that she's nothing more. She just wants to sell it on the black market to make money.
Yeah, that's the thing. You mentioned earlier that she wanted to complete her dad's like whatever. And it's like, well, actually, she's just after money. And her character also, for some reason, they felt the need to show all the time that she's just thirsting. She just wants to get fucked by like every attractive dude that walks by. It's kind of weird. I don't know why they put that element in there at all. Didn't really make a ton of sense. But her character knows everything that Indiana Jones knows. Uh,
Yeah.
she's constantly belittling him. Even opportunities they have for it to be like, oh, she was wrong about this one thing. They can't even do that. She like has to be right all the time. I don't have any issues with her saving him once or twice. It does seem like she's kind of always saving him, but I don't have any issues with it a couple times because let's be real. We saw Marion save Indy. We saw Willie save Indy by reaching her hand in that thing. So we've seen Indiana Jones get in situations where he needs luck or someone else to help him in order to
Okay,
not
so
die. We've seen that before,
I'll
but
give you
this is
that.
different.
I'll give you that. Miriam and all them. But this woman gets on a motorcycle
Yeah.
in the middle of like a massive storm, chases down an airplane getting ready to take off, leaps off the motorcycle, grabs onto the wheel, saves the day. And she's on the
To
plane
me,
and like, oh my
to me,
gosh.
that was more realistic than any of her fight scenes. Like she throws a hell of a punch. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That's one thing I couldn't stand
but
either.
then, and
She
then to
was
save Indy at the end, because just to jump ahead, when they end up traveling through time and they go back to Rome, where Rome is invading Sicily and Archimedes is there, Indy's like, "Well, I've studied all this my whole life. I just want to stay." And
yeah.
she's like, "No, you can't," and she just punches him in the face.
Describe that a little more concise or a little better. Yours was
Oh,
concise, but I don't know if anyone understands what that means.
that's true. I'm sorry,
So
man. It just was like, what the freak is this?
basically, the Nazis get control of the dial of Archimedes, and they're trying to go back to
To
1939
kill Hitler.
yes, exactly, to kill Hitler and like set things right so that they can win the war, which is kind of crazy. What it's interesting, right?
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with that. But it wasn't ever meant to go back in time. It was only a set destination. It was so that Archimedes could get help when they were fighting the Romans. And so they go back to like 213 BC in the middle of this big battle. The plane ends up immediately getting destroyed by a bunch of like
There's like
big
big
arrows and stuff.
spears
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
Flaming rocks.
I don't know why they decided to go so low. It
So
wouldn't
the
really make
Romans are
sense,
just
but
taking them out with giant spears and everything. You're just like,
yes. Which those were like the arrows that they used to shoot against other like boats and
yeah. So they're
stuff. You know what I mean?
giant, like
Yeah, they were big. But anyway,
Uh,
so that plane crashes. All the Nazis end up dying. Phoebe Waller-Bridge and Indiana Jones parachute to safety. He's been shot in the chest for like 30 minutes at this
oh
point.
yeah, that's
But
right. Yeah,
he
yeah.
wants to stay. He wants to stay there because it's what he studied. Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character is like, no, you can't. We got to get back. You're going to die if you stay here. And also, you'll change the course of history. You can't just stay here. And he's like, I don't care. There's nothing to go back to what? There's nothing for me in that life anymore. This is what I've studied. This is what I want to be a part of. He asked to stay with Archimedes. The idea that Indiana Jones, because he's fucking lonely and depressed, would be willing to change the course of history
Yeah.
as we know it is insane.
Yeah,
That's not
a big
Indiana
thing.
Jones.
Yeah, he would never do that.
When you look at what Indiana Jones has done, his principles ever since he was a little kid trying to get that cross of Cortez, like he's wanted to preserve history.
Yes.
The idea that he would ever want to change it is nonsensical. It's completely against his character. And he doesn't want to go back to the point where Phoebe Waller-Bridge knocks his lights out, knocks him unconscious at the end of the movie to drag him back to the present. And even after she's done that, he's still mad until Marion walks through the door because she called her or something and was like, hey, Indy's back. And she brings him some groceries and they make peace. And that's the end of the movie.
Helena, the giant savior of them all.
The movie went too long, by the way. It was 2.5 hours. That was way too long. There was a couple moments in there that made you feel like, okay, that's an Indiana Jones moment, like a little one-liner or a little smile from Harrison Ford or whatever. I think Harrison Ford does a good job in this, considering he's a freaking almost 80-year-old man.
Yeah.
To be honest, I think he gave a good performance.
Antonio Banderas makes a guest appearance only to get murdered. And Indiana Jones like, one of my best friends has been murdered who I haven't seen in like 30 years.
Dude, I was like, I was going crazy because I'm like, has Antonio Banderas been in a fucking Indiana Jones movie? So like the way that he turned when they introduced him, he's like, and like you see it's Antonio Banderas. I'm like, what the fuck? Is this really him? And it was Antonio Banderas. He's never been in an indie movie before, but you get told that they have a good relationship. So that was crazy.
In indie fashion, they did add like weird creatures. This one had eels that remind Indy of snakes, I
I
guess.
hated that. I hated that. Again, they tried to incorporate elements of what makes
Yes.
an Indiana Jones movie in this. They did. I think James Mangold is a really good filmmaker. I think one of the problems is you have a franchise that's been entirely directed by Steven Spielberg. And then all
Yes.
of a sudden you have a movie that's somebody who's not Steven Spielberg, who's a good filmmaker on their own right, but is trying to do an imitation of Spielberg. And I don't think it works very well.